Good evening and welcome. I am Lolita Browning Jackson, and I serve on the Atlanta Business League's board as your Vice President of Public Relations and Marketing. And a little bit about myself, in addition to being a mother and a wife, I wear several other hats as well, but first being I'm a Regional External Affairs Manager for Georgia Power for the Metro East region, which includes the city of Atlanta. And in that role, I work with city officials with the city of Atlanta, Fulton County, as a liaison to Georgia Power, as well as several business and community organizations. So with that, on behalf of our board president, Mr. Thomas W. Dortch, our executive director, Ms. Leona Barr Davenport, and our entire board, ABL board staff members, welcome to our monthly business forum. Just to tell you a little bit about ABL, for those of you who might be visiting with us this evening, since 1933, the Atlanta Business League has been a strong force for positive growth for business in Atlanta. ABL serves as one of the voices for many small business owners, using its collective power to influence the course of events politically, socially, and at all levels, including government, business, and civic and community. As challenges present themselves to entrepreneurs, the ABL continues to meet them head on. And one of those challenges, or among those challenges, is that we ensure that we support each other and our businesses with success and growth. So I'll leave you with a call to support the 5% solution. And I'm just curious, how many out there have heard about the 5% solution? Okay. The 5% solution is a campaign that was started, an initiative that was started several years ago by the Congress, which is spearheaded by Joe Hudson. He leads that effort. And it is a campaign to encourage each other and to spend 5% more each year on African-American owned businesses. And so each time we have our forum, we talk about the 5% solution, so that we ask you to spend 5% more this year, and we ask you to share with your friends and your family to spend 5% more with an African-American owned business. Additionally, I want to add that as chair of the Public Relations and Marketing Committee, we need you. So if you are a marketing or PR guru, please plan to join us at our PR and Marketing Committee meetings. We meet every first Thursday of the month at the ABL offices at 10 a.m. So our next meeting will be June 7th at 10 a.m. at the ABL office on Martin Luther King. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. How you doing? Good evening. I must say today I saw rain. I saw heat. It was even cool this morning. I don't know what's going on in Atlanta. My name is John Thomas. I'm with 360 Clean here in Atlanta. And just to piggyback on what Lolita said, the Atlanta Business League really is a forum for growth. And it really does help entrepreneurs. I can say that because I am one. I got here to Atlanta in 2004 after returning from Iraq and couldn't find a job. Been in the military, but I did remember what my grandmother told me. If you can't find a job, make a job. And I just so happened to run into a couple folks with the Atlanta Business League, and boy, did they set me straight and put me on the right path. 360 Clean is a commercial cleaning company. We specialize in medical facilities, but what we've decided to do is bring that same type of cleaning approach that you get in the hospital to commercial offices. That could be banks, that could be daycare, spas, any type of commercial office building that you have. And the unique thing about 360 Clean is, of course, we're concerned with the image, but more than that, we're concerned with the health of your employees, the health of your clients, the health of anybody that comes in contact with your business. Did you know that even more dirty than your bathroom toilet is your actual desktop? Your desktop contains actually 400% more germs than your toilet. And that's because it's just so much high traffic. And so what we really try to do is bring that same type of infection control, that cleaning, that same type of deep clean, the same thing you would get inside a hospital when they're getting ready to operate on you and cut you open. We bring that same type of quality clean to your building. Now, doesn't that sound encouraging? I know it does. And so I really encourage you, if you're not happy with your cleaning company, if you're starting to notice little dust bunnies running around, or you're just not getting that same quality service, I really encourage you to reach out to me. Give me a call. We're competitively priced. A lot of times we're a lot cheaper because we do massive amounts of volume for a lot of hospital settings. We work with big companies such as Apple, Wellstar, and a few other names that you guys know here in Atlanta. So if you have any questions, I have some brochures over here in the corner, and my name is John Thomas, 360 Clean Atlanta. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Michael Brooks. I'm the president and CEO of West End Medical Center, which is a 501c not-for-profit, federally qualified community health center. Our mission is to take care of the underserved in Atlanta, and those are people who don't have health insurance or who don't have access to health insurance. I'm a physician by trade. I graduated from the University of Alabama. I have a master's in business administration from Emory University. Let me tell you about West End. West End has been around since 1976. And like I said, it provides primary care to the underserved. We have OBGYN, pediatrics, adult medicine, and dentistry. We're located in Austell, Cobb County, and we have a main center here in Atlanta. We see over 65,000 visits a year. Most of them are primarily Medicaid or uninsured. We do see private insurance. We specialize in chronic illness. I would venture to say we have the best statistics in the state as it relates to taking care of diabetes and asthma patients. We outshine Emory and all the other medical facilities around. In addition to that, we take care of the underserved. Those are patients who can't afford medications, so we have programs to help them get on medications. We have programs to teach them how to cook, teach them how to eat, how to control their diabetes, their hypercholesterolism, and their cardiovascular problems. What we can offer to the community is that we have, like I said, some of the best disease management programs in the city. We also have a mobile health unit that can do dentistry and do medical examinations. So if you need health care, or you know someone who needs health care who can't afford it, we have a sliding fee program, so it's based on your ability to pay. You can pay as little as $30 for $200 to $300 worth of medical care. Again, my name is Dr. Michael Brooks, and I represent West End Medical Center in Atlanta. And thank you for inviting us.
Well, good evening, everyone. How is everyone doing? My name is Chuck Day, and I'm President and CEO of Data Systems and Games, or TSNG as we like to call ourselves. TSNG is a lottery services company, and for the past 20 years we've had a subcontract, the GTEC Corporation, to operate the backup data center for the Georgia Lottery. GTEC Corporation operates most of the lotteries in this country, and in fact most of the lotteries in the world. The backup data center's role is actually that. We are there in case of emergency. So when you go to the gas station to buy your Cash 3 or Cash 4 ticket, we are there to ensure that you can always buy a ticket, because the state has mandated that we should always be up and running during normal business hours. And if we're not, GTEC can be fined anywhere between $2,000 to $20,000 a minute. So we don't want that ever happening. One of the things that really is near and dear to my heart is actually something else that we do, is that we actually also operate the lottery for Atlanta Public School System's pre-K program. And that's near to me and dear to my heart because, as you probably know, the lottery pays for pre-K. So it's sort of full circle that I now get a chance to do that for the students for the city of Atlanta. I'm really here today to talk to you about membership. and give you a sort of a membership testimonial. I'd like to know how many people here are not members. Are there any people who are not members? Raise your hand. Okay, very good. I will be seeing you shortly. You know, many times people say, well, why should I join any organization, or why should I join the ABL? And I have to be honest with you. I've been a member of the ABL for the last 4 years. Not just me, members of our staff. One of my members, Derek Weems, is here. He comes to a lot of these business forum meetings. And we've gained so much knowledge. But that's not the reason you really want to join, because everyone wants to know what the bottom line is. Am I going to get a contract? Well, the answer to that is, it depends on you. And I'm going to give a quick testimonial to say, you know, it's all about relationship building, and it's all about networking. And I found this to be the best place in the city of Atlanta to meet people, to network, and people who want to give back to you and help you. There's so many things that you can do. First of all, I encourage you to join. When you join the ABL, get on a committee. And we have several committees. There's the technology, there's business opportunity, education, membership, PR and marketing, and of course, my favorite, public policy. But getting back to why you should join, I was a member here, as I said, for 4 years. I've gotten to know a lot of people through this. I've gotten a lot of information. I'm able to pick up the phone and call people and say, hey, do you know so-and-so? I need to talk to so-and-so. That's important. That's how you get contracts. And just recently, I started working with DeKalb County, doing a lottery, working with their lottery system, student lottery. Could not have done that, by the way, without the help of my friend Layman Walker in Cyprus. And that little small contract that started out for just several $1,000s, and because we were networking and being friends, has now turned and blossomed into several $100,000. And I can tell you that you could not have done that unless you participate, you join, and you become a member, and you get to know the other members. And that's why I'm a member of the ABL, and that's why I encourage you to become a member of the ABL also. So I would love to talk to you. I've been charged with getting 5 people to join tonight, so I'm going to work real hard to get that done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chuck, and all of those who've preceded him this evening. Chuck, I just want to make another announcement. I want to add to the announcement you made. Can I just see the hands of those who are not members of the ABL? Once again, please. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can stop there, but there are some others, so you can get started now. Thank you, thank you. and also I want to say that I'm getting practice here. I'm Yuri Parker, the co-chair of the Atlanta Business League, and I am so excited about all the opportunities that ABL is offering its members. And today is one of those examples. I have the opportunity to introduce to some and present to others Mr. Doug Hooker. I've had the opportunity to hear the presentation that you're going to hear here tonight. So when you leave, make sure you tell everyone who are not here tonight that they missed a grand opportunity. What he has to talk about this evening is extremely, extremely important to the economics of the Atlanta metro area. I would like to introduce to you Mr. Doug Hooker. Mr. Hooker is the executive director of the Atlanta Regional Commission, or the ARC. As head of the official metropolitan planning organization for the 10-county, 68-city Atlanta region, he oversees and directs regional planning programs in the areas of transportation, air quality, the environment, land use, water resources, as well as agent services and workforce development. Mr. Hooker was previously with Atkins, which was formerly TSNG, where he served as Vice President and Southern States Director since 2005. In that capacity, he led client development for the company's water, environmental, transportation businesses in the Southeast. His prior experience includes serving as executive director. This man has an abundance of experience. Executive director of Georgia State Road and Tollway Authority, And during the 1996 Olympics and throughout most of the 90s, Mr. Hooker was Commissioner of Public Works for the City of Atlanta. He has also held leadership positions with other engineering firms as well. He is deeply involved in his community, and we are so happy that you are. He is a graduate of Leadership Atlanta, Leadership Georgia, and the Regional Leadership Institute. Mr. Hooker is co-founder, board member, and former chair of the Civil League for Regional Atlanta. He serves on numerous other boards, including the Metro Atlanta Chamber, the Council for Quality Growth, and the Emory University Board of Visitors. He is a former board member of Georgians for Passenger Rail, Georgia Conservancy, Park Ride, and the Institute for Georgia Environmental Leadership, among others. He is married to the lovely Patrice Perkins Hooker. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Doug Hooker.
Thank you so much, Mary, and thank you to Leona and the board members of the Atlanta Business League for inviting me to speak this evening about the upcoming transportation referendum. I want to, oh, there's my wife in the back. There's my much better and lovelier half. You'd stand up real quickly, dear. Okay, well, wave your hand. That's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
Thanks for acknowledging her.
Absolutely. And I also want to acknowledge a longtime colleague of mine. We now work at different places, but we worked together for several years and have been friends for many years. Senator Doug Stoner, who's in front here. Thank you for being here tonight, Doug. Doug and I are members of the greater worldwide Doug fraternity, so if there's any other Dougs in the room, come and join us after the meeting. I'm going to try to be quick about this and offer you opportunities for questions, because probably you have a lot more questions than the presentation can talk about. Hey, Carol, how are you? I didn't see you over there. Longtime friend and colleague, Carol Dortch. Carol and I were at the City of Atlanta together. So I want to be quick about the presentation and offer you more opportunities for questions. But also, as I'm going along, if you have questions, feel free to ask me. Part of this presentation was developed for an audience specifically for the Beltline, so you probably don't want to get into a lot of Beltline questions, and I'll just ask Nick to go through those fairly quickly, but just give you the overall perspective of the referendum. Now, let me start with those who know, first of all, that there is a referendum going to be held. Yes? Yes. Okay, and you know the date is July 31st, yes? Okay, good. Now, those who know the history of the referendum, where it came from. Okay. Well, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Okay, let me give you some quick background. The referendum was allowed because of legislation passed in 2010 called the Transportation Investment Act of 2010, in which the Georgia legislature said the state will be divided into 12 regions. Each region will have a vote on the same day, July 31st of this year, and each region can draft a list of projects which to put to voters in that region. All regions are voting as regions. So for the Atlanta region, we will not be voting as 10 different counties and adding up what happens. We'll be voting collectively as a 10-county region. It's historic because it's the first time we've ever had to vote and make a decision like this in a direct referendum on a regional basis. So if you live in Fayette County and you don't like it, but everybody else votes for it, well, you're stuck with it, okay? Vice versa, if everybody else votes against it and you live in Fulton and it turns out to be a 49% minus one vote, then we don't get it. So just understand that in context. The list of projects that have been put to the voters is a list of 157 projects in the Atlanta region, roughly totaling $8.5 billion in value to be done over the course of 10 years. The referendum, the tax itself, a 1% sales tax, will be for 10 years or $8.5 billion, whichever comes first. So with that, I'll start a little bit into the presentation. Now Nobody ever has this problem except me. This is what traffic looks like for me every day. But I know you all don't have that problem when you get around the region. You know, you zip through. Anybody stuck in the mess yesterday? No, I thought just me. I understand. Okay. Part of the question that people ask sometimes is, well, why is there a need? Why don't we? The DOT gets a lot of money for transportation every year anyway. I pay my money at the gas pump when I pay state and federal gas taxes. And there's a couple of things. First of all, we have two trends that have been enforced for many years that have led to a situation now where we don't have enough money to finance transportation improvements or make major improvements in the transportation network. One of those trends is the fact that automobiles has become more efficient. The U.S. fleet, on average, is 40% more efficient than it was 20 years ago. 20% more gas mileage on average, which is a tremendous amount. That means you basically drive 40% more miles for the same basic gas that you bought before. And then with regard to the actual taxation of gas taxes, Georgia's 7.5 cents a gas tax is the same today as it was back in 1971. They raised it to 7.5 cents per gallon in 1971, and it has stayed the same since then. I doubt very many of us can live very comfortably on the same budget that our household had in 1971. I know I can't. I was still in school. So, you know, I don't know about the rest of you all. You're probably a lot younger than me. So those are the two basic rationales. And the likelihood that the state legislature or the Congress is going to raise the gas tax to put additional funds into the system is just not very likely, especially in these days of high gas prices already. The public is already sensitive to that. And in order for the gas tax to have the same purchasing power now in Georgia that it had in 1971, it would have to go up roughly 25 cents a gallon. So I don't think anybody is really particularly interested in that. Federal outlays. Folks expect that we get federal funds for transportation, which is true. And over the years, the federal gas tax was raised until about the mid-90s, which is the last time we had a federal gas tax raised to the current level it is right now. And Congress, obviously very hyper-partisanship right now, is not likely to be raising the U.S. gas tax. So again, we have a gas tax on the federal level that's 20 years old. And as a result, the Highway Trust Fund, which has been the primary source for large federal projects throughout the United States, including here in Georgia, has dwindled. It used to be that the Federal Highway Trust Fund was a great surplus, and Congress would raid it to help balance the budget and fund other programs. But now it's in a negative status, and the general budget in the federal government has to supplement, the federal outlays for transportation programs. And that's a trend that we're likely to see increasing over time. Part of our problem in Atlanta is not just only not having enough money for transportation improvements, it's the fact that we've had so much success. We've been a very successful region in the course of time. Since the late 60s, basically, we've been one of the most successful metropolitan regions in the country. In the last 10 years, we've had over 1 million people move into the Atlanta region. And over the course of the next 25 to 30 years, we're projecting an additional 3 million. Even with a slowdown in the economy, we're still expecting that we're going to have roughly 3 million people who want to move into the Atlanta region. Now, anybody got family or friends in Mississippi? Arkansas? Okay. You can just tell them all to come and move right now. We can get over done with at once. Basically, 3 million people is the equivalent of the entire state of Mississippi, the entire state of Arkansas, the entire state of Iowa, if you want to go into the Midwest, moving here. That's a lot of people to absorb. Another way I put it to folks is, imagine Fulton County 3 times over. Fulton is the most populous county in the state, 1 million people, or a little bit more than 1 million people. So we're talking about 3 times the number of people in Fulton County, the entire state of Mississippi or Arkansas. That's a lot of folks who try to accommodate in our current transportation network. And since we haven't put any real new money into it for over 20 years, then the expectations things are going to get worse, not better. our combination of our growth and our lack of capital spending on transportation in Metro Atlanta, we're the 9th most congested metropolitan region in the country. Now, some people may have seen something that says we're the 4th worst commute. It's a different measure of the same kind of a problem, okay? Commute is a matter of travel times. Congestion is a matter of the volume of cars on the road at any given point in time for the size of the network. So we're the 9th most congested region in the country, 4th worst commute in the country, okay? And as I said, we have been very slow to spend new capital investment on expanding the transportation network. Over the last decade, we've been 48th per capita spending on transportation. Georgia's been 48th. And people say, well, Georgia DOT has a lot of money. It does. It gets $2 billion a year, roughly speaking. All the funds, the state funds and the federal funds combined, is roughly $2 billion a year. Okay? But they have to divide that $2 billion up amongst the entire state. And our problem in Metro Atlanta alone is worth over $100 billion over the course of the next 30 years. So that $2 billion divided up amongst the whole state is not going to help us get very far very fast. I show this slide only to say that our problem, combination of lack of spending and high rate of growth, means we're not only one of the worst problems overall, but we have the worst intersections in the interstate in the country. 3 of the top 50 worst bottlenecks in the interstate, U.S. interstate system, are right here in Metro Atlanta. Okay, I-285 and 85, Spaghetti Junction. I think most people have probably been through Spaghetti Junction at some point in time in their life and regretted that they had to go through it. I-75 and I-285 on the west side of the perimeter, around Windy Hill, another of the most major congested areas. And then the third one is I-20 and 285 on the west side. Anybody been through that area at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the evening? Okay, so if you have, you know what I'm talking about. It's a truck parking lot, right? The trucks just stack up southbound 285, trying to make that movement westbound onto I-20 West. So those are the 3 of the worst intersections in the entire country. We have 3 of them right here. There's one intersection that's not on this list. Mary's heard me say this before. Anybody know what it is? 285 and 400, which is actually more congested than number 20 and number 42. But because Georgia 400 is not an interstate, it doesn't get listed on the U.S. interstate list of worst bottlenecks. The Federal Department of Transportation keeps up with this kind of stuff because they try to program monies for the worst areas in the country. So we have one of the worst in the country, but because the intersection is not an interstate, it doesn't even get on the list. Okay. So the proposition for voters is, do you want to pay, are you willing to pay an extra penny sales tax in this difficult economic climate to be able to put into advanced transportation improvements in the Metro Atlanta network or other regions of the state if you live in other parts of the state? And it's not an easy decision. I tell people I recognize that's not an easy decision. And I'm not telling you how to vote, but I also want to try to give folks a little bit of a historical perspective. Atlanta has never advanced based on easy decisions. We've been a history in a region, we've been a city and a region that's developed because of difficult decisions that were bold, not easy. And I take people back to, how did Hartsfield get started? Most people don't know the history of Hartsfield. Hartsfield used to be a racetrack. It was an abandoned racetrack, Candler Raceway. In the 1920s, 1927 specifically, Alderman, which is the same as council member, William Hartsfield, one of the name bearers on the airport now, Alderman William Hartsfield convinced Mayor William Sims to redirect city monies to lease the Candler Racetrack in 1927 because he said there's going to be air commerce, and in order to be a major place of business, we need an airfield. It was a very unpopular decision, and part of it was the reason why he got unelected at his next election. Well, he came back later on and got reelected and later on became mayor, but he didn't make that decision as mayor. He made it as an alderman because he had a vision that air commerce was the next major transportation mode and that somehow Atlanta had to have an airfield if it was going to be part of the national conversation in business. Not an easy decision. MARTA. How many of you have lived here since MARTA started? So a few of you. Okay, Oscar, good to see you. Most folks who've been around long enough and know history know that MARTA, the vote for MARTA went down in flames the first time. MARTA got voted on the second time, and by less than 1,000 votes. If there had been no MARTA, there would have been no Olympics, no convention business. We are one of the major convention centers in the country. We were able to attract the Olympics largely because we had a very established, progressive MARTA system. So I say that to say, once again, giving a little bit of history flavor, we haven't developed because of easy decisions. Easy decisions anybody could make and we move on. It's the tough decisions, and that's what you as voters are being asked to consider right now. So the act itself, as Mary said, will cover the 10-county Atlanta region. For those who are not familiar with the 10 counties in the region, let me just tell you how it's bounded. Cherokee is the furthest northern county, Fayette is the furthest south county, Rockdale is the farthest county to the east, and Douglas is the farthest county to the west. So just generally in that area, those are the 10 counties that make up the Atlanta region. It will be a 1-cent sales tax for 10 years or $8.5 billion, whichever comes first. This is really critical to understand. The way the legislation's set up, it called for the state economists to do an estimate of the sales tax collection in each region if each region were to adopt the tax. Based upon the state economists' estimates, which is $8.5 billion for us as a region, the legislation says the tax can be collected for 10 years or $8.5 billion, whichever comes first. So if the economy is going strong and we reach that $8.5 billion mark in 8 years, 9 years, the tax stops. Vice versa, if the economy is moving slower and we only have $7.5 billion collected in 10 years, the tax stops. So it's 10 years or $8.5 billion, whichever comes first. Of that $8.5 billion, 85% of the funds go toward the regional projects that are on the project list, and I'll talk about those in just a minute. 15% of the funds get divided on a pro rata share to go back to the 10 counties and the 68 cities in the Atlanta region on a pro rata basis for them to spend on local transportation needs. Okay? So 85% for the regional projects on the list that are easy to see, 15% each county and city gets to decide how they're going to use it for local transportation, but only for transportation. They can't use it for anything else. Also, another important point is that 100% of the funds raised in the district stays in the district. So if the Atlanta voters adopt the tax on July 31st, but Savannah voters choose not to, we cannot export, nor can DOT or anybody else export or redirect part of our funding to help Savannah. Whatever is raised in the district stays in the district. Likewise, if we fail to pass the tax, but some other regions do pass the tax, we can't get any of their funds to assist with our needs. So each region's money stays within itself 100%. Somebody's asked me the question recently, well, if we do this, does that mean that DOT can now redirect dollars that they use for Atlanta to other places? No. The law addressed that as well. We have currently a thing called congressional balancing, and it requires the DOT to divide up amongst the 13 congressional districts, soon to be 14, in an equal amount, all the state gas tax revenue that they get, equally. So regardless of the fact that Atlanta may have a much greater need than, say, a place in southwest Georgia, equal funds get divided up. And so the law was very specific and said, if a region adopts the tax, the Georgia DOT cannot redirect any monies that that region would normally get under congressional balancing. So this is additive to whatever Georgia DOT would normally be spending in the region. All right? There are concerns and issues about transparency and accountability in the process. How will we know that the money is being spent the way you say it's supposed to be spent? The law requires each region that passes the sales tax referendum to have a citizens review panel. The citizens review panel are 5 people who are not elected officials who are selected by the governor, lieutenant governor, and the speaker. Okay? And then it requires those 5 folks at least once a year to do an audit of all projects that were published prior to the vote and put out a report on a website and in paper, however they want to put it out, but definitely on a website, that's required by law, to say this is the status of the projects, this is the status of where they are schedule-wise, this is the status of how the funds are being spent. Are they being spent on the things that the government agencies advertised that they would do before the vote? Now, in Metro Atlanta, our elected leaders have had the discussion that although we don't have the citizen review panel yet, we're going to encourage them to actually publish information more frequently than once a year. But at a minimum, they have to do that, and they have to maintain a website that the public can get to see at any point in time the status of projects and money. So that was part of the accountability factor, to try to help citizens see where the money is actually going at any point in time. And an audit has to be done by a professional accounting firm to basically ensure that things are being done in accordance with good accounting procedures. As I mentioned before, it's not that we don't have transportation funding, it's just that the level of transportation funding doesn't allow us to do much to enhance or make the system better for mobility. So right now, over the 10-year period that the referendum, the sales tax would cover, we would expect roughly $13 billion to come into the region if federal funds don't dip. That's a big if, but that's the only assumption we can use right now. If federal funds don't go down, stay roughly the same, we would expect roughly $13.2 billion come to the region. However, 70% of that money gets used strictly on operation and maintenance. That leaves $4 billion over a 10-year period, roughly $400 million a year, for a region the size of Atlanta with the needs we have. So if the voters adopt this, if you choose to adopt it, then basically what it does is it adds another 60% funding on top for primarily capital expansion, new transit, road widenings, and interchange improvements and things of that nature. I mentioned the 157 projects that are on the regional list for Metro Atlanta. That's roughly $7.2 billion of the $8.5 billion, and the $1.3 billion balance is what gets divided back up to the local counties and cities. And of this $7.2 billion, $3.7 billion is for transit projects, most of that for MARTA-related needs, and then the balance is for road needs and bike and pedestrian trails. I'm going to skip through the Beltline slides. I'm sorry, I put these in for a different audience. Does anybody want to hear about the Beltline? I mean, I'll be happy to tell you, but I think you probably know most about it. Okay, that's what I'm thinking too. So you got a lot of flipping to do here, Nick. I'm sorry. I didn't get a chance to take these out. All right, back up one. Back up one more. There you go. All right. One of the responsibilities of the Atlanta Regional Commission is to do several kinds of forecasts: population forecasts, jobs forecasts, demographic forecasts. Not just the numbers of people that are moving here or the size of the population based on births and deaths, but also what's the makeup of the folks in the region in terms of demographics, racial, age, and all that kind of a thing. And then we also require to do jobs and economic projections. And our projections based on if the voters adopt this is that it will inject an additional $34 billion into our economy and result roughly in $18 billion increase in net income for the metro region altogether. And that we will create and maintain, and it's important for me to say and maintain, 200,000 new jobs. So what does maintain means? I mean, when you create a job, it doesn't go away the next year. It means it's a job that's likely to be there for the ensuing period. Or it also means that certain jobs that are in jeopardy of being lost are likely not to be lost. So 200,000 jobs impact, $34 billion impact to the economy over and above if we didn't have the tax. We save a lot of fuel because we can move move through the system a lot easier and faster. The estimate is that for most commuters, they'll experience anywhere from a 12% to a 40% improvement in their ability. That depends, of course, on where you're traveling and how you're traveling. But most of us will see a double-digit improvement in our commute times because of the projects if they're adapted and put into place. And then last but not least, I'm going to mention very quickly that the air quality improves tremendously as well. All these projects, once they're in place, are the equivalent of taking 72,000 cars off the road from air quality purpose, okay? We take out the pollutants equivalent to 72,000 cars. And for seniors and children, that's extremely important because they're the most vulnerable in the system, especially when we start getting hot days. When we get days over 85, 90 degrees, a lot of kids, a lot of seniors end up in emergency rooms for respiratory problems. And I think that's basically, yeah. All right. Just, if you want to see about the project specifically, I can tell you that you can go to 2 different websites. One that's a very long name, but it's intuitive, Metro Atlanta Transportation Vote, MetroAtlantaTransportationVote.com, or you can go to the Atlanta Region's website, which is AtlantaRegional.com. Either one will get you to a place where you can actually look at different projects, specific projects, or you can look at different parts of the region and how a network of projects works. You can actually do a flyover. You can learn about the scope of the project size and all that kind of stuff. So with that, I'll say enough about that. Last but not least, let me address 2 other things, because I know these are of interest not only to you but to people throughout the region. With our economy being what it is, what are the possibilities for jobs and contracts? We have a committee led by Chairman John Eves that's working on the 2 issues of workforce development and procurement opportunities, specifically for small minority-owned businesses. Okay, in the workforce development effort, we've been making a lot of advances, and we believe that we'll have some interesting announcements in the next month or so. But we have set up, or imagined, if you will, a process by which we will have a specific workforce development training program that we will ask local governments and GDOT and Greta to, by contracts with contractors, to encourage that they give hiring preference to. And we can't force that legally. We can't mandate that they do that. But we can ask, by encouragement, contract to encourage them to basically give first consideration to employees, or excuse me, potential employee candidates who've gone through our regional workforce development training program. The specifics of how the program will work, we won't actually do until after we know we actually have a referendum to work with. Because if we don't have a referendum, we're kind of wasting our time in that regard. The other thing was regard to contracting opportunities. The DOT staff and board are going to be considering soon an increase in small business and minority business contracting goals as a part of their program. All the projects that they do, which are basically all the large projects that will have federal aid attached to them, will also have the federal requirements for minority and women-owned participation. And all the transit projects, I shouldn't say all, most of the transit projects that will likely be paired with federal aid. Any project with federal aid will also require DBE and minority participation as part of federal goals. And then a lot of the projects, volume-wise, are going to be done also in the city of Atlanta, Fulton County. And although Fulton doesn't have a specific goal, we know that the elected leadership has a preference for that. And then DeKalb County LSB. We are currently going through the list right now to quantify the projects that are likely to get federal aid, both on the DOC side, the transit side, and then the local government side. So we'll be able to say percentage of the $7.2 billion, what percentage is actually going to be involved with agencies that have small business and minority participation goals. And we should have those numbers probably in 2 or 3 weeks. So we are working on this actively. I can tell you that most of the political leadership is very sensitive to the need to leverage this as an opportunity, not for just general economic development, but also for specific purposes of putting people back to work and giving contract opportunities to those who have not traditionally enjoyed contract opportunities. So that's what I can tell you so far, and I'll be happy to take any questions you might have. Yes, sir.
I heard you say that down $2 billion to split amongst the regions.
No, GDOT has roughly $2 billion, which is a combination of federal appropriations they get plus state motor fuel tax.
So you said Atlanta's region backlog was $100 billion?
Our backlog by itself is over $100 billion.
Okay, over what time span is that?
30 years.
So 8.5, let's say 8.5 came out of looking at that and advertised.
Yeah. Understand that all the projects on our list in Metro Atlanta are projects that came from our regional plan, our long-range regional plan, okay? And so what the referendum would do was allow us to advance those projects and take away the uncertainty about whether we'll have money to fund them in the future. So that's primarily how it helps in the Atlanta region. I can't speak to what the other regions have done. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
I'm Alice in that MARTA was created because of African Americans. And I was wondering about the race issue and what in your plan and how you take that into consideration, especially since commitments have been made in the past and they have not been followed through with as far as the African American community. And very seldomly do we get those contracts from no federal agreement state. The state of Georgia does not do business with us. So I was just listening to you. It seemed like we are going in circles because blacks do not benefit from all this great public policy to increase the contract opportunity in our communities. And I'm just trying to listen to see what's different because I know in DeKalb County, the commissioners made a commitment to bring MARTA, the extension, going out to
I-20 East.
And your publication that you sent us out there is misleading. So when you go back and look at it, because it gives the indication we're going to have the transit coming through the mall, and then it's not stopping nowhere at Emory. So all we need is facts, some real effort that the league can be used in a way to help us make something happen this time if you want our vote.
Okay. You said a lot, so I'll try to put response into certain capsules. One, with regard to the MARTA projects in DeKalb County, South DeKalb County, there are 2 projects on the list that will go into DeKalb County, the Clifton Corridor, which comes from the Lindbergh Station, go to Emory, as you mentioned. And then there's $225 million to apply toward the I-20 East line. Now, that money, if we anticipate that money will be used to leverage federal funds so that we can either do bus rapid transit or light rail or a combination. And that determination is made by MARTA and the federal government through the process that is called the environmental impact statement process. So no, I'm not promising you anything other than if we have the money, we have something to work with the federal government so we can establish rail in South DeKalb. And I hope our material is not misleading. That's what it should say. And if it says anything other than that, then I need to see it. But it may not be our material. It may be somebody else's material, so I can't control that. With regard to opportunities, I think it's unfair to say that blacks didn't participate from MARTA or didn't get any benefit. There are a number of folks in this room, colleagues of mine in the engineering and related industries, who have had business and done a lot of business with MARTA. I mean, when I was with a small minority engineering firm, we did a lot of work with MARTA. So I do know that there are a lot of African-American businesses that have benefited from MARTA. Is it sufficient? That's not for me to judge, and I can understand why a lot of people say that it hasn't necessarily been sufficient. Understand that MARTA gets directly through this process that the voters adopted roughly $1.3 billion, which is not chump change. You know, granted, it doesn't get us out into Cobb County and Gwinnett County. There are different transit lines for Cobb County. Clayton transit system would be reestablished, and neither Clayton nor Cobb have DBE programs, although Clayton is considering one. And whether Cobb will do so, you know, only time will tell. So any extensions of transit in the region outside of Fulton and DeKalb are still subject to what the political will of those communities are with regard to whether they establish disadvantaged business programs. I think in the 10 years we're likely to see other communities move in that direction. Gwinnett is already a majority minority community. Now, it's not minority controlled politically yet, but it is a majority minority community. It's the first majority minority county in the entire state of Georgia. Most people don't realize that. Okay. So I think over time you will see, as African Americans, Asian, Hispanic Americans gain more political clout in the county, they will look for and demand opportunities for small minority business to be able to participate in the overall contracting of the county. Will that happen in 10 years? I don't know. I'm not a soothsayer. I'm not going to try to say when, but I think inevitably it will happen. Cobb County is moving the exact same way. They're quickly moving to the point where they will soon be a majority minority county. In fact, most people don't realize that the Metro Atlanta region within the next 5 to 7 years is going to be a majority minority community. The 10 counties will have 52% minorities, excuse me. We'll move from, so, you know, and typically it's been our communities that have been left out of contracting opportunities that have demanded these kind of programs. And so I expect to see some of those other communities change over time. But I can't say that as of July 31st, they're going to have a program. They probably won't, just to be honest with you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question about, I guess, the regional plan, and if this vote will somehow connect the region. It seems that everything is in silos. You can't really get from Fulton to Cobb on transit or Cobb to Gwinnett. It seems like everything is silos and it's not connected. And when I can go even further to talk about, I guess, economic development and how we can compete against other
Regions.
in the country, and how we compare in that
Okay,
sense.
two different questions, and I'll respond to both. In terms of how it connects, we will not have a perfect transit system after this referendum. Everybody votes for it, and we put in all the projects in 10 years. We'll still be far from a perfect transit system, but we'll have a much better transit system than we currently have. It will add 57 miles of transit that we don't currently have. That will get us and give people the option or the opportunity to get to employment centers without being dependent on a car that they currently can't do very easily. So it will help begin what we extend to what we call Concept 3. Concept 3 is an aspirational transit plan that the region adopted about 3 or 4 years ago. And the whole plan for heavy rail, light rail, bus rapid transit, streetcars is roughly a $52 billion plan by itself. So this will begin to move us in that direction and give us more connectivity. So that's one thing. The other thing is about our competitiveness. I try to tell folks that we have to understand that we're not making a decision in isolation. This vote of ours is known in every major metropolitan area in the country. They all know it's happening. Washington, D.C. knows it's happening. The federal government knows it's happening. And let me give you a couple anecdotes how I can say that for sure. I was at a conference in January of regional commissions and talking to one of my colleagues from Dallas. And he said to me, he said, as a regional commission director from one to another, I hope you guys get the vote because it'll make your life a lot easier. He said, but if you don't get the vote, we're going to eat your lunch. They know it's occurring. They're watching to see what we do. I was invited last Friday up to Charlotte by the Charlotte Chamber of Commerce on a transportation summit to tell them about our regional referendum. People are watching. One of my colleagues in Florida said, we're all watching because we want to come visit you if you get a yes vote to learn how you did it so we can do the same thing. If we think that we're making a decision in isolation, we are fooling ourselves. If we think that the rest of the world is going to think we're all wonderful, no matter what we say and what we do, we're fooling ourselves. Part of the perception of Atlanta is not just the fact that we have congestion. A lot of regions have congestion. Well, what employers want to see is, are you trying to do something about it? Because then I have a story I can tell my employees or potential employees. For 20 years, we haven't been putting new money into the system, and so the reputation we have nationally is that you guys have congestion, you don't want to do anything about it. And oh, by the way, you're running out of water too. So we don't have a very positive perception for employers outside of the metro area. And there's a lot of employers inside the metro area that are grousing about the fact that we don't seem to have the political will to deal with important issues. So, you know, we will have our lunch eaten if we don't do something. If you choose as a voter not to do this, which is certainly your right, then come up with an alternative, something we can do, because sitting still gets us nowhere. I'm not trying to fuss, I'm just trying to express reality. Oscar, I'm sorry.
Personally, you know, I am in support of this transportation plan. But Alice speaks of what the realities are here, as far as my opinion of it is concerned. Once you get $8.2 billion, my question is, the minority community needs to get a significant piece of that. And I don't hear any talk about that. There's no talk from the political side to any side about that. So why should we spend more money for everybody else to get jobs and get contracts?
Well,
Without a commitment. Now,
I'm not going to debate it with you. All I can say is you just have a choice, okay? And I hear what you're saying, Oscar. But no. Let me express a point. Let me express a point. I didn't say it was an easy decision. I started off saying it's not an easy decision. And I think we're naive to think that $8.5 billion is going to be spent. We're not going to benefit from any of it. Are we going to benefit as much as we should? That's the political question. And you have to put it to your political leadership. As ARC, I can encourage them to do all kinds of things, and we're trying to encourage many of them to do that. But we can't make them do anything. They bend to the will of the voter, not to the will of the
Give you an
regional commission.
example.
Okay.
Give me an example. Now, the airport, we got 30, 40% minority participation at
Right.
the airport. That's gone very well. Atlanta is known for that.
Right.
That's what the reputation is. The Olympics were the same thing. All right? MARTA, black community, minority community said, you're not going to build MARTA unless you build out to our community.
Right.
That's how the vote came. It didn't happen the other way. In the paper today, it's called the Transit Hub. I guess this is part of this.
I haven't seen the papers.
It
So I
says
can't
the
take it.
Transit Hub gets traction downtown.
Talking about the multimodal passenger terminal. It's not a project on this. This is separate, but that's
And
okay.
I'm just telling you.
All right.
The majority community has the bulk of this deal. There's nobody that I know except insignificant going to participate. All I'm saying to everybody is, to wake up to the economics of the deal. I'm not saying that ARTC is responsible or anything like that, but you got to go and let folks know that you want your piece of the pie. When you had 50% of the population, you should be participating in 50% of the deal. You're paying for it. So I'm just bringing it out to everybody that they should be aware of that.
Okay. And I think those are excellent points, and I agree, and I will represent that perspective to the elected members of my board. I want to offer some sense of hope through this, though. First of all, as I said, GDOT staff and GDOT board are sensitive to the need that they have to do better. And we're hoping to get a resolution passed by that board within the next month that will make a permanent statement of they're going to try to do better in their own contracting. All the transit, or most of the transit projects will pull down federal funds, which will require them, regardless of where the money is spent, to utilize minority and women-owned businesses, because that's part of the federal contracting policy. And if you consider Fulton, DeKalb, and Atlanta, that a huge part of the dollars in the referendum actually will flow through those governments, which have traditionally been favorable and supportive of minority-owned, women-owned, and small business contracting. So I only say to say that I can't tell you percentage-wise the dollar volume that's flowing to the governments and agencies that have been traditionally supportive, but we're trying to figure that out soon so we can publish that number. I think it's going to be well in excess of 50% of the dollars. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to go and get 50% of the contracts, but I think the point is to say that I believe and I have hope that a large part of the dollar volume of this program will be contracted by governments that have historically been supportive of small business opportunities and minority business opportunities.
One thing I'd just like to say, for instance, like in this hub situation.
Yes, sir.
The prime architect.
Mm-hmm.
There's no joint venture. There's no minority folks up in their office place. That sort of thing begins to send the wrong signal. Okay, when that sort of thing's happening, this is the reality of the deal. Once the deals get cut, this is who comes to the table, and we're not there.
Well,
And so
it's a DOT project, so all I can do is say,
Send the word back.
lobby your DOT, but I will take the word back. I certainly will. Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Doug. MARTA is near and dear to my heart. And so I wanted to know if you could kind of talk a little bit about the...
Alice, I'm sorry, I called you Carol.
Oh, I don't know. I thought you were talking to somebody.
No, I apologize. I called you Carol. And Alice Wiggins Tolbert, who's also a dear longtime friend. I know she thought I've lost my mind now. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I'd like to, if you could just talk a little bit about, or Senator Stoner, about the recent governance bill that went before the state and what that means and what that means in terms of MARTA, because it went nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still an issue of who's in charge and how is it going to work.
And that's a good question. What Alice is referring to is that there was introduced in the legislature this year a governance bill that would have established a regional transit governance organization to try to coordinate all the federal funds for transit and coordinate the policies and the system so we can eventually make a seamless system regardless of which county or city it comes out of. The region has been working on this concept of regional transit governance for the past 6 years. And we have come up with, the 10 counties who are involved and the 4 operators who have been involved have come up with a set of principles that we adopted unanimously. Local government control, your proportion of voting power was based upon your proportion of financial participation in the system. and I forget the third one, but anyway, those are the most important two. The governor last year established a legislative task force to which some of our board members, local government people, were also asked to participate. Senator, were you on the task force? I know you watched it like a hawk. Thank you very much, but I don't think you were officially on it. Yeah. But that task force was asked by the governor to come back with recommendations for a regional transit governance mechanism and a proposed bill. Okay. They did what the governor asked them to do. The legislation that they proposed to introduce, and that was actually introduced in the House this year, went directly against the principles that the region had unanimously adopted. And so therefore the region spoke with one voice and said, that's not our bill. That's not anywhere close to what it is. That bill would have kind of put MARTA to the side, not allowed MARTA to participate in certain decisions and funds, and would once again have put a state entity in charge of local transportation decisions. And the region with one voice said, that's not what we've been working on for the last 6 years. We want something that's controlled by local officials that recognizes the preeminence and importance and centrality of MARTA, and that keeps local elected officials who are responsible to local voters in control of this system. So what will happen next year, we don't know. We're going to be doing a lot of exploratory conversations this summer. Senator Stoner, I don't know if you want to offer anything.
Yeah, I'll just make a quick comment. Obviously, I was involved very closely in these issues. I serve as the ranking member of the Transportation Committee in the Senate, and I chair the subcommittee on intermodal rail transit. So this is in my bailiwick. And to be very honest with you, Senator Mullis was the chairman of Transportation in the Senate. Him and I worked very closely together. It's a very bipartisan committee. Doug knows that because we've worked over the years. And the House did introduce the bill, and Senator Mullis, after consulting with me in our conversations, just made a decision. We weren't going to waste anybody's time introducing a bill because we understood that we had to have bipartisan support to get that bill passed. There's going to be some folks on the Republican side who wouldn't support it. There would be a few Democrats who wouldn't support it. So you had to have both sides. And as Doug said, the fact that the way it was designed, that the state had the ability to make the final decision, and the fact that they weren't putting next to nothing for transit in this region, I can just tell you, I could not tell my caucus, as chairman of the Democratic caucus, my members, when I couldn't support that. And there's no way you're going to get our caucus supported. So at that point, you have, the whole Democratic caucus couldn't support it. At that point, Senator Mullis understood we just didn't have the support. So we just made a decision not to waste anybody's time. The House went ahead and introduced it, but obviously it went nowhere. My hope is we pass this referendum. It's going to force the issue. That's why I keep telling folks, from my perspective, is what we've passed, this Transportation Investment Act, is really just the beginning. It's hopefully to give us the chance over the next 10 years to really sit down, particularly the transit end, build a truly regional transit system. If it doesn't pass, obviously we're a lot farther from being able to do that. So that's just my take and what happened during the legislature this year. But if I get reelected, which is hopefully my plan, Senator Mullis and other folks are ready to work again and try to see if we can come up with something that makes sense.
Okay. Cynthia, we taking too long?
No.
Oh, okay.
I want to piggyback a little bit on what Alice just asked. So what leadership role, Doug, do you guys see MARTA having in the whole regional aspect? They've got the infrastructure, they've been the operator, they have been the transit entity, but there's all of this, there's this looming uncertainty about MARTA. What role do you see MARTA having in the future?
I basically see MARTA having a large role required to all the technology and the basic design of the infrastructure in the system for sure, because at the end of the day, everybody else's system has to tie into and coordinate with MARTA, regardless of whether it's operated by MARTA or not. Several of the projects on the list are going to be done in consultation with MARTA or controlled by MARTA. The Clifton Corridor is one that MARTA is leading, which is a major investment in rail. The Beltline is being controlled by the Beltline, which is a city agency, but the Beltline's been working cooperatively with MARTA to develop the design standards and everything else. So from just a pure technical leadership role, MARTA has a lot to offer. Certainly it has the maintenance facilities and everything else. We don't really need to try to recreate all of that in every county in the region. It makes no sense. It's a waste of taxpayers' dollars. So I think MARTA will have a large say in how the regional system gets shaped and a lot of the policies we have. Will MARTA be, in fact, the leader as an authority over everybody else? I have my doubts because politically, I don't see everybody going with that. I think we're going to either have a regional entity that coordinates with the 4 separate agencies and they come to common design standards and common system and fair policy, or we will have a new agency and everybody else has to be absorbed by it. That's a political decision that yet to be decided. I think it's more likely to be the former than the latter, though. I think each regional operator is likely to keep its own identity under the umbrella of a coordinating agency, and that in that role, MARTA's going to have a strong leadership role. So, yes, sir.
Yes, I'm Joe Hudson, Vice Chair of Public Policy for the Business League. I wanted you to take something away from this meeting that might be a little different. We at the Business League for the past 5 years, as has been mentioned, we've been holding something we call Congress on the State of Black Business in Metropolitan Area. And it's not about contract. It's about the economic importance of the black business as a part of the fabric of this
community. Absolutely, yeah.
And many times when we talk about contracting in these other cities, they have this social flavor. It's the right thing to do. Well, look, we've got, this is 2012. These white businesses are no longer coming over to Vine City to open up an office. It's going to be a black business or an Asian business or minority business. And so we need to begin to involve the minority community into the economic thinking of the ARC, not as a social attachment, not as some benefactor of grandiose wonderfulness of people. No, it's a
but as an essential economic component.
Right, we are an economic. We've done an economic impact study that said that we have a $24 billion economic impact on metropolitan Atlanta. Now that, look at your slides, that ain't nothing to sneeze at.
No, it's not.
And it says we employ 156,000 people in metro Atlanta. So that makes us a player, but people don't recognize small businesses and black ones and minority ones as players. They see us as some other thing. And I'm just asking you to take back with you, and as you move on through your work at ARC, the notion that the black businesses and the minority businesses are now a different kind of an economic entity in this community. Things have changed, so we have gotten the benefit of whatever we've gotten the benefit of. But we're not recognized now as being an employer. We're not recognized as paying taxes. We're not recognized as having this meeting and going back and telling our folk that this is important because we see it as a way to hire Mary, whom I couldn't hire because I didn't have nothing to do. And as I mentioned to you, we're the employer of the last resort in most of these communities. And somehow that needs to be reckoned with and brought to the table as part of the decision-making process. Not as some, the right thing to do, and minorities are, happy family, let's go sing jingles or whatever we do.
But a smart economic strategy.
Just straight up economics.
Yeah, I agree.
And so we're asking you to take back. So when you're on the planning committees and you're talking to these folks, say, look, these folks employ people. They pay taxes.
Right.
They collect taxes. They distribute taxes. We do all the things that everybody else does. And in our own community, we may be the only persons to do that. So that it's really more important because nobody's coming to rescue us now. It's up to us.
Right.
So we'd like you to just take that.
I will certainly take that back. And Mr. Hudson, that's certainly a line of thinking that I not only want to take, but I also want to inject into the regional conversation. As I said, we're becoming a majority-minority community, and what does that mean? When you consider the fact that in the United States, small businesses, employers of 100 employees or less, are the majority of job creation and have been for several years now, and that's the likely trajectory for the United States. We often think of the IBMs, the AT&Ts, and the Coca-Colas. it's great to have these big industrial, global, international giants, but the fact of the matter is, for most Americans, you get employed by a small business owner, black, white, Asian, Latino. With the growth of the African American, Latino American, and Asian American populations, who also tend to have small business as a large part of the fabric of their communities, those three groups, then we do need to, if for no other reason, just out of strategic necessity, but being smart about it, engage with those groups and how we can strengthen and grow minority businesses, because they will be our job engines for the future. So I agree with what you're saying, and look for opportunities to have that conversation more.
As a planner, and I think that that's one advantage we as a region could have over these other
A lot of the regions, I agree.
think if we incorporated all of our citizens in the economic conversation versus just the big players.
I would agree with you. Yeah, thank you for that. So I don't want to take up your whole evening. I'm going to, no?
You're good. We have,
Okay.
I'm just going to come with closing remarks, but before we do, I just kind of wanted to recap.
Okay.
A lot has been said this evening. We absolutely appreciate your presentation. However, the questions and concerns that we've presented to you, we would also like to engage. We would also like to invite you to come back and bring us some follow-up or feedback.
Be happy to do that.
Comments. And then finally, what I would like to say is I heard you say that the governor and lieutenant governor were going to appoint a 5-member citizens review board.
Right. The governor's, lieutenant governor, and speaker of the House.
Okay.
Right.
I would like to propose that with some of what you heard here today, that some consideration would be given to coming back to the Atlanta Business League and perhaps ask for a representative for at least one of those seats. Thank you.
We will certainly make that known to them. But we have to have a referendum passed first. Otherwise, there's no panel appointed.
One more question. Doug, we talked about this earlier, but is there any way that you can kind of...
We've traveled far together, haven't we? We were out in DeKalb County right before this and rushing down here.
There's been a lot said as it relates to, I guess, the minorities. Could you possibly highlight a little bit what we discussed earlier in terms of if this bill does not go through, what do you see happening to, some of the plans for expanding MARTA in the DeKalb County community, as well as some of the jobs and things?
If this bill doesn't go through, we're going to be, our situation will physically on the ground get worse from a traffic point of view, because those 3 million people aren't going to stop coming, or at least most of them are going to stop coming. And we won't have any new money to expand or improve the system. It will deteriorate quite dramatically. And some people are of the belief that, well, if we don't have it, we can take money and build rail in certain places. We won't have the money to build the rail. I said before that the nation is watching, and I mentioned the federal government is watching this. I've had no less than 3 conversations with the Secretary of Transportation for USDOT, Secretary Ray Hood, and he's made a point of saying, look, you guys have gotten this far. We're really watching it. We're really hoping that this will work for you, because we'll be your partners if you have it. But if you don't have it, you're going to be last in line. The fact of the matter is, the regions that advance transit are the regions that are able to bring 50%, 60% of the cost of a project to Washington and say, here's our contribution, give us the balance, in order to be competitive for federal funds. And federal funds are getting fewer, not more. And so, it's not to put a scare, but I think people need to understand the reality of our competitive posture. If we don't have, God bless the child has got his own. If you got something to work with, then you got something to have a conversation about. If you don't have anything, you just sticking your hand out waiting for somebody to give you something. It's not going to happen. Okay, so I don't know if that answered your question or not, but
I think for the most part, it's important to make sure that we have the dialogue, but I think also that we have a situation where a lot of people just don't understand the complexity of what's going to happen if we don't get this bill.
right, yeah. It won't be a pretty picture. You can catch me crying in my office on October 1st. Film at 11. All right, thank you all very much.
If you can go on that side.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Leona Barr Davenport, president of the Atlanta Business League. And on behalf of our board chair, Mr. Thomas W. Dortch, who is on travel, and many of our members who are not here for one reason or another, I want to present this gift to Mr. Doug Hooker for coming out this evening to present and to share with us. A number of things happened this evening. He informed, he educated us, and he has agreed to go back and promised that he will go back and share with his leadership and those who are in positions of authority to tell them what we said. Now, in addition to that, it is our responsibility to tell them what we want them to hear also. We cannot only depend upon Doug. Doug will be a messenger, and that's his role as executive director, but it is each of our responsibilities to talk to our elected officials, to let them know what we think, how we think, why we think that way. I personally believe that this transportation initiative must be passed. But second part, it is our job to make sure that we get in the middle of everything that's going on. And as an organization, we're going to do that. We're going to ask for additional meetings and have conversations about what will happen next and how we want to see some things happen. But we need to have you behind us. I cannot be an army of one. Yuri Parker is a business owner. She cannot be an army of, we can't carry it together, but we will need your help and your support to make that happen. So when we call you and we ask you to show up, then please plan to do that. And that was not a part of the book presentation, but I'm about But this book that we share with speakers was written about Dr. Booker T. Washington with a number of his lessons and experiences in life. It was published in Wichita, Kansas. All of us know that's where Dorothy came from. Published in Wichita, Kansas, with the second publication by Gene Anderson in the Wichita, Kansas Business League. And we're glad that they saved this publication because there are very few left. We understand that you can find a few on what is that? Amazon.com, but the Atlanta Business League has a few of those left, and we give them to speakers who come and share and have a vision for what needs to happen next and what has already happened. And you'll find that Dr. Booker T. Washington was way ahead of his time in his lessons and in his direction in seeing not only the African-American business move forward, but businesses across the world and the country. So we would like to present this to you.
Thank you very much.